should have died from this disease a long time ago. I think I probably like blackouts more than you do.
Maybe.
If I don't stay under these covers, I'm going to scream at you all until I get drunk. So leave me alone.
Welcome to Breaking Chains, The Sober Mindset. I'm your host, Rodney Hood, and we've got a very special guest today, straight from the coffee-chugging, flannel-wearing capital of the world and the great state of Washington. He's rocking almost 3 years of sobriety, and let's be real, folks, that's no small feat. So stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Levi McGinnis. What's up, Levi?
Good morning, everybody. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Glad to have you on the show.
Good.
So we want to kick off the show by getting to know you a little bit better. Can you tell the viewers where you grew up and what your childhood was like?
Yeah, my childhood was chaotic, and it was full of moving around a lot. My mom was doing her best to provide for two boys as a single mom, and she learned that dating guys in the Navy was, a good source of her substances and stuff that she liked, but also it was a safe environment for her two kids.
Right on.
So yeah, I had a lot of stepdads and boyfriends. I was always the new kid in school.
Yeah.
Those challenges didn't really impact me that much, though.
You shared with me that your mother also struggles with alcohol. Tell me how that impacted your life and where your relationship is now.
I'm pretty lucky in the sense that my mom found the program when I was 8 years old, and my brother was 12. And before that, it was just her being a low bottom drunk in 1988, in her mid 20s.
Sure.
And my life was miserable, but I didn't really know anything else. She got pregnant and looked around and was like, I don't want this for this kid.
Sure.
And decided that drinking wasn't the thing, but didn't really know where to go for help or anything, and white knuckled it for like 2 weeks. And then made the decision that she was going to go to her first prenatal appointment, and then after that go to her mom's bar and get a drink and go from there. But at the appointment, she saw a flyer. I don't remember what it said, but it was like, do you have a problem struggling or whatever? And it was an AA flyer.
Wow.
She put it in her pocket, like embarrassed and excited at the same time.
Sure.
And by the time the appointment was over, she had changed her mind about going and drinking. She got back on the bus and read the flyer. And by the time she got off the bus, it was just, her head was full of information that made sense to her for the first time, especially the last 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
And there was a phone number. She called it, and they said, go ahead, bring your kids down here. And I remember the first day we went to 9th and Mac in Bremerton, and that's when my life got better. That's when I learned that the life that we were living before, was tough, and
Right.
It changed after that.
I still remember the first time I drank booze. It was a 6-pack of Bartles and James wine coolers my sister's friend bought for us. I think we were around 13 years old. All I remember was breakdancing, spinning on the floor, then projectile vomiting all over the living room. Let me ask you this. Do you remember the first drink you had and how old you were?
The first time I got drunk, I had consumed alcohol a couple of times in my life. But the first time I got drunk, like drank with the intention of drinking, I got so shit-faced. And I was like 19 years old, 18 or 19. And before that, had only smoked weed once on my 16th birthday.
Wow.
And I didn't notice that I had a problem with it, like in the sense that I had to admit that I was powerless and that my life was unmanageable, until about 22 or 23. So it was pretty quick because I grew up in AA. I
Sure.
knew where to go when I needed help. I was fortunate.
So, next question. Looking back, what were some of your darkest moments while you were still drinking?
The darkest moment I experienced during my struggle, I would have to say in like 2015 when my stepdad passed away on our hunting trip.
Wow.
For years before that, I was experimenting with normal drinking. The AA Big Book talks about things like my drinking career is characterized by my countless vain attempts to prove that I could drink like normal people.
Sure.
Um, that's what I was doing, and I genuinely believed that I was doing it right. I would say to people, AA's hats are off to me because I can drink like a normal person.
Right.
And I was fooling myself
Right.
big time. The darkest moment was when he passed. I didn't realize how much I relied on him.
Sure.
I took him for granted. I loved him. He loved me. We loved each other. But when he was gone, I was like, damn, I could have done so much more. And that guilt, the loss, it slowly became too much for me to handle. But I didn't realize that until drinking had increased to me, blackout drunk every time, and driving under the influence, which is something I never did before. Like, regardless of how intoxicated or whatever I became,
Sure.
I always had the wherewithal to sleep in a ditch or walk, hitchhike, fucking anything.
Right.
But this last time, thank God that I didn't die or kill somebody or, thank God.
Yeah, I mean, thank God you didn't end up with a DUI, hurting somebody, hurting yourself. I mean, one bad decision can be life-changing when it comes to alcohol. I got a DUI 10 years ago and continue to drink. Unfortunately, that's the risk an alcoholic's willing to take.
Not even willing. The Big Book has this story about a jaywalker, this guy who constantly crosses the street in front of traffic, no matter how many times he gets hit by a fucking car, no matter how many times he goes to the hospital, no matter how many trustworthy people tell him to stop. He seems compulsively addicted to the thrill of trying to beat that car across the road. And that's fucking alcoholics.
Yeah.
We turn everything into a thrill challenge eventually.
Let me ask you this. Were there any specific moments when you felt that your past was really weighing in on your mental health?
I do suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders like they talk about in the Big Book.
Sure.
I've got a number of documented and medicated mental problems.
Sure.
And those I'm learning now that I have embraced the simplicity of one day at a time.
Yeah, right.
I'm learning that those mental things are really important to take care of for my sobriety.
Yeah.
I get tricked into thinking that I'm suffering from the obsession or the allergy when really it's a symptom of my other mental disorders. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes my PTSD causes oblivion. Because I'm an alcoholic, I know the damage that alcohol will do. So it's simple for me to quickly go to alcohol when that unfightable feeling of oblivion comes along. So for a long time, I struggled thinking that I was just dealing with my alcoholism and I was doing something wrong, but that wasn't the case. I have anxiety that causes me to want to abuse substances that doesn't have anything to do with my alcoholism.
Got it. So when it comes to alcohol, what was your go-to drink?
When I was younger, I liked drinking a lot of whiskeys and stuff, because like they're disgusting, but there's that macho attitude of choking down a whiskey shot or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Shot of tequila.
But I never preferred like mixed drinks. I always preferred beer. And then in my last trip out there, it was extra challenging to quit because I had developed the taste for craft IPAs, and I started brewing my own beer,
Oh,
and
wow.
that made it really a lot harder to quit
You
when
dove all the
you
way in.
build. Yeah, I built a relationship with beer. I studied it. I learned about the history of it, and I drank it for fucking 20 years. And then I spent 1 year learning about it, and then I was like, wow, this is cool. But I was fooling myself. That was another example of me trying to prove that I could drink like other people. I think I probably like blackouts more than you do.
Maybe. I know you've been talking a lot about AA, the big book, and going to meetings. So for someone who hasn't been to an AA meeting, tell them what to expect from your point of view.
There's all kinds of people in AA. It's the only place I've ever been, except for the city of Chicago, where there is pretty much every demographic represented at all times. And if you want to fix whatever problem you have, then AA has a broad spectrum of stories and experiences.
Right.
So my advice would be keep going. Like they say, keep coming back. But if you haven't gone yet, I'm telling you, keep going. Just have an open mind, and you'll hear somebody's pain that mirrors yours in a way that you'll start to not feel alone.
Right.
Some people show up and they're just like, woohoo, I'm going to do this. And some people show up are like, I don't fucking trust anybody, especially all these weirdos.
Right.
So, just that's what my advice would be.
Awesome.
You will find somebody who is so much like you, but so much more sober than you,
right?
That it'll plant an idea in your head that you can do it, and that's the beginning of faith. That's the beginning of faith. Is a belief that you can do something that you don't really believe you can do.
Exactly. What are some of the tools you use to get and stay sober?
So the tools that I use mostly these days are the fucking cliches that I didn't understand all the other times I tried to get sober.
Right.
That's I waited it out. The one day at a time magic clicked for me. And that's the tool I use the most, because aside from my alcoholism, just staying in this moment is a good idea for somebody like me with ADHD, PTSD, all the other stuff. But it took a lot of work to clear my mind of the distractions that block me from seeing how easy it is to live one day at a time. And then there's other cliches that are popping into my head now. Like the other day I was laying in bed, just fucking miserable, sober as hell, but had to tell the family, if I don't stay under these covers, I'm going to scream at you all until I get drunk. So leave me alone. Right. And I'm laying there, and that cliche pops into my head, but it sounds different this time. And it's just, it's not a thought, but I don't want to be all hokey and call it the voice of God. But it went, my worst day sober is better than my best day drinking, right? Absolutely. And I'm laying there, and that was my worst day sober. I can tell you that was my worst day sober, and it was better than my best day drinking, because I sat there thinking, what was my best day drinking? Couldn't fucking remember. Right. So two things had happened at that point. One, I became so disconnected from alcoholic Levi that our fucking values, I couldn't even recognize it, Sure. And then secondly, it helped me come to terms with, my growth. And it was, I think that was the beginning of me understanding one day at a time. When I was sitting there thinking, God damn, What was my best day drinking? Probably winning all 4 games at pool.
Right.
And the pride that I felt from doing something like that was nothing to the enjoyment I had from experiencing my emotions.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I experienced them, and it was better than being drunk.
All right, young Levi. Imagine we have a time machine and you could go back and chat with your younger self. What would you say? And do you think your younger self would actually listen?
I tell him that it's not his fault that he doesn't understand boundaries. He grew up in a life where there was so little supervision that people were free to violate his boundaries. And I would say, Levi, you're going to make mistakes because of these traumas that you experienced. And you're going to cross boundaries, but that doesn't make you a bad person.
Gotcha.
You know, that's what I would say. And hopefully that Levi would listen and go, okay, I'm going to reel it in. But
we'll never know.
No, I do know he didn't fucking listen to anybody.
He didn't listen to
all.
anybody.
No, when I was 14, man, my dad was trying to teach me about mindfulness, you know, so this is like 1994.
Sure.
Mindfulness is pretty new, you know, and I didn't fucking get it at all. And then a few years ago in the hospital, I'm reading this mindfulness stuff and I can hear my dad's voice in the back of my head. You know, the fog is clearing and I'm like, oh, this is what he was telling me 30 fucking years ago. It only took me this long to figure it out.
So we like to sprinkle a little bit of comedy on the show. At least everyone has one. So what's one of your best drinking stories?
Well, I've got a couple. But the best one is this one night, like everything happened in one night. We had a car broken into. We had a fire. We had a fist fight, a dog attack, and there was so much other stuff going on that night that now that I'm on the spot, I can't even put it together chronologically.
That's okay.
There was some fun there, you know. It wasn't all misery, but I didn't know that I was miserable the entire time.
Right.
You know, and that misery didn't end until I bought my last beer, which I didn't get to drink. I fucking bought a beer. I scrounged up some change and I had a beer in the pouch on my motorcycle.
Okay.
And I was going to drink it and then go pick up my daughter. And I'm like, if Mary smells alcohol on your breath, you're in trouble.
Right.
So I go into a store, I come out and my pouch is open and my fucking beer is gone. And I'm like, really? Really? I look up at the sky. I'm like, really, God, you're going to let some other guy drink my beer? Right. So I was just like, that's a sign from God.
Yeah.
I counted that as my first 24 hours because I hadn't drinking that day yet. I had drinking the day before. So December 3rd, 2021, nice. I was going to drink, but God, I don't know, gave me an early start on my first 24 hours or something.
So as you reflect back on your sobriety, let me ask you this. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And since we're dreaming big, what about 10 years down the road?
In 5 years, I'm going to have embraced one day at a time so many times in a row that people are going to come up to me after meetings and email me after Zooms and be like, hey, will you talk to me about this stuff?
For sure.
And I'll be very happy to do that. And then 10 years, I'm going to have been one day at a time so long that I won't count my sobriety as my successes anymore. Sure. I will look forward to sharing sobriety with other people who suffer. Should have fucking died from this disease a long time ago.
Wow. Hey man, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. It's been a blast getting to know you, brother. I wish you all the best in your sobriety. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Here's wishing you all a happy sober day. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as always, God loves you, and so do I. Peace.